Well, hello and welcome to a new episode of SportsDay Rangers. I'm John Blake.
And I'm Evan Grant.
We hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving holiday, and once Thanksgiving goes by, that means everybody's favorite event on the baseball calendar, the annual baseball winter meetings, which will heat up next week in Orlando, Florida.
I don't know if it's everybody's favorite event on the entire calendar. I think fans like it. I'm not sure anybody who's actually at the winter meetings enjoys it. And partly with the Rangers, and with every team, you don't know what they're going to do during the winter meetings in Orlando. But we do already know that this Rangers team is going to have a different look in 2026, really, than it has for the last 3 years.
So the Rangers have already made changes, and Marcus Semien, Jonah, Heim, and Adolis García, heroes of that World Series 2 years ago, are no longer on the club. Brendan Nimmo has been added. And it's already been a busy offseason for Chris Young with a lot of work left to do.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about what the Rangers still have to do, and I'll give some thoughts on all the departing Rangers. We left Josh Sborz out of that. I think he could be back, but temporarily he's gone. And, here's my little bobblehead from the 2023 last out. Both those guys no longer Rangers, Jonah Heim and Josh Sborz. But we're also going to talk to former Ranger and Baseball Hall of Famer Ferguson Jenkins and take a look back at a small sampling of some of the shouting matches that John and I have gone through during all our tempestuous times at winter meetings gone by.
And also a couple of the winter meetings where the Rangers actually were kind of the hit of the winter meetings back in the day. So, Evan, did you have a nice holiday?
That was great, John. We spent all day Wednesday cooking. We had 8 people here. It was very nice, quiet. The only bad leftover that we had was that I had a cold over the course of the weekend, and then Gina caught that from me. So we're battling through that, but I'll be ready to go for the healthy environment that is the winter meetings. What about you guys?
It was good. My daughter cooked this year for the first time, so that was great. And her husband made maybe the best turkey that I've ever had. It was very moist,
Wow.
and so it was all very good. And
what was so special about this turkey?
It was just very moist. I mean,
it was a moist turkey,
right? He smoked it for hours, and he had a brine on it. I mean, he's a very good cook, so it was a pleasure. And the wife didn't have to spend hours cooking over the turkey, so we got to go to the
What's your
turkey
favorite
trot.
Thanksgiving side, John?
Well, as you may know, the Pilgrims had the first Thanksgiving back in 1621, I believe.
Yeah, and you did the presser for that, I believe.
And the Pilgrims believed in vegetables that were in the ground. So if you're from New England, you always have butternut squash, turnip, and onions. And those are the traditional Thanksgiving vegetables. I know a lot of people don't have that in Texas and every other part of the country probably, except Massachusetts, and maybe some of those people don't have it anymore either. But those are my favorite vegetables.
You had turnips?
Yes, I did.
Like you were the guy who went into the store and actually purchased some turnips this year.
Well, I bought the turnip, and then we mashed it up, and we had turnips. Yeah.
That's great. Potatoes grow in the ground too, John.
I know, but turnips...
You could just have potatoes.
Yeah, well, turnips are more traditional, and if they're good enough for Miles Standish, they're good enough for me.
I could just see you back in the day. Questions for Standish? Any questions for Standish?
Bottom of the ninth, bases loaded. Here comes Jimmy Dale from Baker Brothers Plumbing, AC, and Electrical.
Thanks, Chuck. When your home pitches curveballs, Baker Brothers knocks it out of the park.
Home run, Baker Brothers. Incredible.
As the official home service partner of your Texas Rangers, we're offering $300 off a tank or tankless water heater.
Another winning call. Visit callbakernow.com or dial 214-342-1171 today.
Baker Brothers.
Great service.
Well,
all right, so let's get to this, John.
Yeah, let's get to it. So busy off season for the Rangers so far. Made a lot of changes, and I think we need to look ahead, Evan, as opposed to looking back. Your column in Tuesday's paper kind of look back a little bit. And, my take on this is that team had 2 years to kind of keep the momentum going. They couldn't do it. And I believe that it's time to look ahead here. Hopefully some of these young players can take it the next step this year. But in the interim, Chris Young's got a lot of holes to fill on his pitching staff and in the bullpen.
Sure,
and catching.
And listen, my look back was just to say thank you, basically, for what Marcus Semien and Adolis García, Jonah, Heim, and Josh Sborz all did for that club in 2023. All of them played really significant roles in the drive to the World Series. And I feel like in the news cycle, and I'm as much a part of that as anybody, we're always looking forward. And I thought that on their way out, we didn't take enough time to just basically say what those guys had done. And that, I'm sure that the Rangers, and I know you'll have a hand in it, when they return, they will get, and they should get, both a nice ovation and, the celebratory commemorative montage. But that said, on a baseball level, on building a baseball team, these were absolute decisions that the club had to make in regards to Garcia and Heim, and I think Semien. You look at all three of those guys, those were guys with sub 700 OPSs in consecutive years post the World Series. 1 year is a slump, 2 years is a trend in baseball. And so the Rangers needed to move on from that. They need to move towards guys who are tougher at bats at the plate, better able to work counts, better able to manage some situational hitting. And I think in a lot of ways, most of the work that they needed to do on the offensive side, I don't want to say is done, but I think you can at least go out there and put a team on the field now, right? If there was one place where you could sub somebody in, it was second base. Josh Smith has deserved the opportunity to play more. He steps in at second base. In Brandon Nimmo, in getting an outfielder, you now have a full outfield contingent. I still think you need some platoon pieces to kind of back up Evan Carter, and potentially Alejandro Osuna if he's got a significant role. But you've got some pieces in the outfield, and the rest of the team. Look, first base and third base going into next year, Josh Young and Jake Berger, they're going to be in the same situation that that Garcia and Heim were going into this past year. Coming off of down years, they need to perform. And the Rangers will face arbitration decisions with them after next year. Now we get to the work that still needs to be done. This team needs a catcher. It might need more than one catcher, to be perfectly honest, because I don't know how many games you can count on Kyle Higashioka being able to catch next year. I would think you'd hope for 50 to 60, but that means you've got to come up with at least 100 games from a catcher. And that's going to be hard to find on the market right now. I think if you're going to find that guy, it's going to have to come from a trade. And if you're going to make a trade, you've got a very small pool from which to draw from. And you may have to consider the possibility of, if you really want to get a catcher who can be a frontline catcher, do you trade Sebastian Walcott in order to get that guy? That's a tough decision. There is a lot to be done in the bullpen. This team reconstructed the bullpen in mass in 2024 over that winter last year. And this bullpen outperformed expectations in 2025, but it's hard to do that year in and year out. So the Rangers face some real obstacles there. And yeah, there are other depth pieces that this club needs. It could use at least another starting pitcher. And as we mentioned, some platoon bats.
Well, let's start with the pitching. Let's talk about the pitching staff, and we'll start with the rotation. Jacob deGrom, Nathan Eovaldi, Leiter, all in. Cody Bradford, you hope will be a guy, but he's been hurt a lot during his career. Is Jake Latz a guy that you can count on for 30 starts? Kumar Rocker, but it's like you say, you've got to find some depth pieces, like a Patrick Corbin or something that you had a year ago.
Yeah, look, that's six guys that will figure into the rotation pool, I think. But a modern rotation pool has to be 9 or 10 pitchers deep at a minimum. I think you can factor in the possibility that Jose Corniel will make a handful of starts at some point this year, maybe Winston Santos before the end of the year. But still, those are guys that don't have any experience. And so you need some more guys with experience. So the Rangers have got to go out. And I do think that of all the issues, I'm not terribly concerned about this club's ability to plumb the depths of the pitching market, because I think they've done an exceptional job in the last 7 years, really, of finding value at the mid-level and lower levels. And I also think that as strict and as austere as the budget is at this point in time, we also know that Ray Davis's practice is that he starts pretty austere, and as the season approaches and he finds a little bit more optimism in terms of finances, he's able to free up a little bit more money to land guys at the end of spring training. And look, in just in the last 2 years, you go back and look at Jared Lorenzen and you look at Patrick Corbin, and those are, or Michael Lorenzen and Patrick Corbin. You look at those two guys, and the Rangers did a really good job in both situations. So I think there will be activity on the pitching market into spring training.
And again, you mentioned the bullpen. The Rangers got a lot of mileage out of them. Several guys that they signed that have been non-tendered in Milner and Webb last year. But do they need to have one of these young guys like a Crivello or a Church or, Cole Winn take another step, or guys like that? You can't just go out probably and sign 6 free agent pitchers. You've got to look internally too, right? To kind of fill that out, especially as you mentioned with the financial situation you're in.
Absolutely. And look, Cole Winn did take a big step last year. And if you look at his numbers against right-handers, you could potentially project that maybe he has the ability to take the kind of step that Sean Armstrong took this past year, and pitch into leverage roles, pitch multiple innings. So that would be something that has to happen. I think you also want to see Mark Church be healthy and effective, and Luis Crivello move into a role where you can count on him, even if it's kind of middle innings. I think the other wild card there is Emiliano Teodo. He's got all the talent in the world, and he's got real upside, but he struggled with balls and strikes last year, and that's something that's got to be figured out. I think the other wild card here too is, as this, sometimes you're kind of forced to rob Peter to pay Paul a little bit. And there's always been some thought that Kumar Rocker could project well as a late inning reliever. And if the starting thing doesn't work out, or if the Rangers do find themselves with a little bit more depth than they need, maybe that becomes a possibility for Kumar. So yeah, they need to have some internal options step forward this year. But I think they've also got a decent number of arms from which to draw from for the hope that will happen. Not all of those guys are going to hit for sure, but if you get 2 of those guys to take steps forward, that's big.
Because realistically, you look at the money that Devin Williams has gotten, and these closers at the end, you're probably not going to be able to compete in that realm. So you're not going out and signing a closer. This team hasn't signed a closer since Joe Nathan. Yeah. So they're not competing in that market. I just don't think the Rangers feel like it's smart money. So what would be winter meetings are very hard to predict. We've seen what's happened so far. Few free agent signings. The Rangers have actually been among the more active teams with the trade last week with the Mets. What do you see? Did you see the Rangers coming away? Do you think they'll enter the Rule 5 this year? What would be your kind of hope? Not hopes, but you would like to see what you'd see come out of next week.
I wouldn't rule out the possibility of them, testing out the Rule 5 draft. But I do think that, look, their number one priority is catching. They have got to fortify that. And I think the majority of their time and effort is going to be spent trying to come up with a catching partner for a trade, or seeing if somebody like a Victor Caratini, a veteran who's on the market, might be willing to take a deal similar to what Kyle Higashioka got last year. I also think that, and certainly with Chris Young and Ross Fenstermaker at the top of the pyramid here, you've got guys who can kind of go out and divide and conquer a little bit in terms of tasks. And Ross was key last year in spearheading the bullpen stuff while Chris worked on getting Nathan Eovaldi done at the winter meetings. And so maybe the same approach happens, and you can find a guy or two that maybe was either a non-tender like Webb was last year, or that's willing to take a major league contract in hand now, as opposed to waiting to the end of the season, to the end of spring training and seeing what happens. So I think you can do a little bit of work on the fringes there. And listen, I also think that it makes a lot of sense for the Rangers to consider Josh Sborz in that mix as one of those guys. I think there's a non-roster minor league deal to be done there with some incentives, and I think that there's a path very quickly and an opportunity for Josh to pitch high leverage innings here. So those kinds of things might be the kinds of things the Rangers do on the pitching front right now. I don't see them being players for big name relief arms or for big name pitchers at the winter meetings.
So, well, I hope that the Rangers will be busy. They'll keep you busy in Orlando next week, and you won't have time to wander over to Disney World and ride the teacups. So, hopefully.
Well, they're not. Fortunately, they're not at Disney World this year, so I won't have to worry about running into Mickey and Dumbo and Goofy and all of them. They're at another self-contained monolith out there. But with the shortening of the meetings by a day, that also kind of is
puts you
news.
in a better mood, right? Than by the end of the meetings when you're usually
the first day of the winter meetings, you kind of get in there and you approach it with all this energy. Then you hear stuff from the GM. The second day, you kind of hear the same stuff, and so by the third day, you're a little bit tired of it. By the fourth day, you're just like, let's get out of here. So eliminating that fourth day, I think, keeps everybody a little bit more sane.
You've also got the big amateur draft lottery and everything else they do out there. So, well, you have a great time, and it's time now to talk to our guest, who this week is Hall of Famer Ferguson Jenkins. Fergie pitched 6 years for the Rangers, member of the team's Hall of Fame. 74, an epic season, won 25 games, second in the Cy Young Award. 91 National Baseball Hall of Famer, 2004 Ranger Hall of Famer. And we're going to talk to him next also about the upcoming Texas Rangers Fantasy Camp, where he will be a coach there. So we'll talk to Fergie coming up next. Well, we're very pleased to have as our guest on this episode of SportsDay Rangers, one of the all-time great pitchers in Major League history, Fergie Jenkins. 284 wins, 3,192 strikeouts, Evan, from 1965 through 1983. Won 20 or more games 7 times, including 6 in a row with the Cubs.
You just need to read the 74 stats.
From
that
67
alone.
to 72. And then he's traded to the Rangers in one of the greater Ranger trades of all time for the 74 season, and under Billy Martin and the turnaround gang, as we like to call it, 25-12, 29 complete games, 329 innings pitched in 41 games started. Was robbed of the Cy Young Award that year, finished second to Catfish Hunter. 1991 National Baseball Hall of Fame inductee, and then a 2004 inductee into the Texas Rangers Baseball Hall of Fame. Fergie, it's good to have you with us.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that.
So we're going to talk a little bit, obviously, about the Texas Rangers Fantasy Camp, which you're kind of headlining here in January. But we wanted to start with kind of the present day. What did you think of the 2025 World Series? And I'm sure as a starting pitcher, you were probably pleased at the strength and the relevance of starting pitching in that series.
Well, it went longer than I thought. I thought for sure after the Dodgers swept the Phillies, and then they were getting ready to play in the playoffs against Toronto, I thought for sure that Snell would probably be one of the dominant pitchers in that series, but he had terrible control. He got behind on the hitters. His fastball wasn't what he wanted it to be, and unfortunately, they stretched the series out. Toronto just kept going back, and that 18-inning ball game was, or 19-inning ball game was fantastic.
Yeah, it absolutely was. When you watch the World Series now, when you watch baseball, obviously you've got a pitcher's eye. What do you like? What stands out for you? What do you look for from pitchers?
Well, I look for them to have good control. It's a long season, so now that you're in the playoffs, I mean, now you got to put your best foot forward, as they call it, and throw more strikes, get ahead of the hitters, and try to keep your team in the ball game. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. A lot of these games got away from some of the starting pitchers.
So let's look back a little bit on your career, and I want to talk about the Rangers a little bit. We've talked about this before. Coming to the American League in 1974, it was a different era. You didn't see every team. Obviously, you didn't pitch much at all against American League teams and American League hitters other than spring training. You saw them only in the All-Star game. How did you make that adjustment? And I know you're going to say that you're 5-0 against the A's, but seeing them in spring training every year was a big deal. But how about clubs that trained in Florida? How did you make that adjustment? From the American League.
My strength was to throw strikes. I was down in the strike zone, getting ahead of the hitter, and we had a good young catcher, Jim Sundberg, and we had team meetings a lot about teams that we're going to try to face, like the Yankees, Minnesota, that how we're going to pitch certain hitters, how we're going to stay in contention even with men on base. And I think Sundberg really learned a lot that first year as a catcher. And as people know, without a good catcher, a starting pitcher or the pitcher's staff is not going to do well. So Sonny was a smart catcher.
And did you like playing for Billy Martin, right? I mean, you were he let you
Billy Martin. Oh, he was a smart manager. He gave me the opportunity to go out there and complete a lot of ball games. He was similar to DeRocher. If he thought that you were still in control of the ball game, you stayed in the ball game. And I think that's a confidence builder to any pitcher that takes the mound to get deep in the ball game, 7th, 8th, 9th inning. I think that really helps your confidence. And by far, you win ball games a lot of times in those last 2 innings you play.
But Billy, I think you've told me this before, right? Billy gave you basically a vote of confidence early in spring training in 74. I know you were coming off the year where your arm wasn't right in 73. Everybody talks about what a old hard guy Billy was, but the stories that you've told me all come across as a guy who gave you some really good positive reinforcement going into that year.
Well, I think the biggest thing is he'd had pitchers that had been on staffs that he really liked. And if he thought that the confidence that he gave you went out there and performed. And I think that's the number one thing. Managers have to believe in older pitchers, younger pitchers. But I think, as I said, those last 2 innings, a lot of times the 7th and 8th, or maybe even the 9th, is where you win and lose ball games by making it a decision to keep the starting pitcher out there or go to the bullpen. And with Billy Martin, like Leo DeRocher and Dick Williams, a lot of older managers, they leave that starting pitcher out there because they confidence that he's got for you to stay out there and do a job.
So does it bug you now when you watch a game and you see a guy being pulled after 2 times through the order?
Oh, definitely. The game has changed. It's not even like the game that I played in the 60s and 70s. Getting yourself in trouble is that total pitch inning that you have 30 or 40 pitches in an inning, and then you go out and you have a sharp inning of maybe 10 pitches. Then you have another long inning where you pitch another 25. Now you're into the 65 to 70 pitches, and that's what gets you out of the ballgame. If you only have 3 innings pitched or 4, the manager just doesn't trust you anymore. So that's why they go to the bullpen.
Fergie, John went through the 74 stats, and we all have heard them a million times, and they always blow us away. But the thing, for me, the underlying thing that doesn't get talked about as much, and John did reference it here early, was your success against the A's that year. I don't know how many starts he had against Catfish that year. Do you know? How many?
I beat Catfish once. Beat Kenny Holtzman, Vita Blue. I pitched against their staff, but what's nice is the team scored runs early for me that took a lot of pressure off me.
But the great thing about that whole story, and you and the A's for me, is how you owned Reggie Jackson. And I've never asked you this. Like, did you talk trash to Reggie in season? Did you get in his head a little bit?
Well, I knew him from spring training. He's trying to hit first ball fastball. He wants to hit you a mile. So I changed speeds, pushed him off the plate, and then change speeds again and make him chase. Make him chase the slider down and away or the breaking ball, the curve ball. And I threw a lot of breaking pitches to him a lot of times just to make sure I knew he wasn't going to hit me a long way. He's a fastball hitter. Joe Rudy was a fastball hitter. Tennis, a fastball hitter. These guys are not going to see a lot of fastballs against me because I knew that's the pitch that they liked. That's not the pitch I was going to try to give up to basically give them that extra base hit or hit a long fly ball. It could be a sacrifice fly if I had runners on.
And did you ever get in Reggie's head about that during the season?
I talked to Reggie a lot. In the spring, a lot of times, or maybe even during the season, I used to always tell him, I say, hey, you're not going to get a soft pitch to hit, like a first ball fastball or maybe a 2-2 fastball. You're going to see a slider down and in or trying to cheat backdoor slider down and away. I just tried to let him know I'm a smart pitcher. I've been around the block once or twice, and I'm not going to let you beat me on maybe a mistake that I made.
So you spent 6 total years in Texas, 74, 75. You then spent the 2 years in Boston, as you mentioned before. Came back for 4 more years here. And you guys came close a few times to making the playoffs. And no closer, I think, than 1981, right? The last game before the first half. And you pitched against the Brewers that game, right?
Right. Yeah, I thought that with the lineup we had a good opportunity to maybe get to the playoffs, but unfortunately it didn't happen. We had that strike too. We were frozen for like 60 days. Guys sat around. There was like 4 guys stayed in Texas. Sundberg, myself, Hargrove, Sparky Lyle and Jim Kern, and we worked out. A lot of guys went home, and they were disappointed that the season was going to be over, and then they decided to negotiate and get the season going again. I think we ran into a bit of a slump. This is the year that Kansas City ended up beating us.
So, but you've made your home in Texas now the last few years. Overall, it seems like you had a great time playing for the Rangers.
Oh, definitely. I enjoy living in Arlington, and now I live in Frisco. I still see a lot of good Texas Ranger fans when I go to the ballpark, or I have a few fans in the neighborhood that remember some of the good years that the Rangers had, and then they were fortunate enough to win the World Series. So, they still believe that the Rangers is still a great organization with some more luck. New players, draft, whatever, they're going to be right there again.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the fantasy camp, the Texas Rangers fantasy camp, which you're headlining January 7th through the 11th in Surprise, Arizona, presented by National Car Rental. And we've got a pretty good lineup of coaches lined up for that. Several addition to yourself, we have Ivan Rodriguez, so 2 members of the National Baseball Hall of Fame. And then we also have several other Rangers Hall of Famers, Ruben Sierra and Jeff Russell. And then Colby Lewis, Mark McLemore, Darren Oliver, Steve Buechele, and Pete Incaviglia will also be part of this. Some of those guys that you coached when you coached at AAA there in the 90s. So why should a fan? What about fan? You've done a lot of fantasy camps over the years, certainly with the Cubs. The Rangers are trying to start this and get this going. What is it about a fantasy camp that's so special?
Well, I think it brings back old memories to certain individuals and ball players that played the game. A lot of them didn't make it, some did. But if you were a good high school or college player, now you're being coached by one of your heroes. And I think that's going to be a big draw for a lot of these older gentlemen that will go to spring training. You're going to be on the spring training field there in Surprise. You'll be in the big league locker room. You'll see an opportunity to put that major league uniform on and go out there and display. Maybe you still got some talent, taking batting practice, infield, and the camaraderie that you have happens after that first game. It gets competitive because you play a doubleheader each day. Now, the team that you're on could be coached by certain individuals, and now you're going to play hard for that particular coach. But the fun part of it, I think, is trying to live out your dream that it could have happened to maybe get in the minor leagues or get to the major leagues. But now you're on a major league field, spring training, and you're playing with some of your idols.
And you guys are also a lot of stories, right? That fans.
Oh yeah, we'll have a lot of baseball stories in the clubhouse. We'll have Kangaroo Court, which was something that really grabs an individual. If you don't wear your batting helmet going to the plate, you don't throw to hit the cutoff man correctly. We'll have certain things thrown to the wrong bag. There's a lot of Kangaroo Court is interesting. Smoking on the field. We don't. Even if you're a smoker, you're not allowed to smoke in the dugout or on the field. Being on time, that type of situation. Kangaroo Court is a lot of fun, and then the stories get really good. I think every player has an individual story that is reflected on his career, and I think that's going to be an interesting part of the fantasy camp for a good 5-6 days.
There's 2 things that I'm relatively certain of that it's impossible to not have a great time. One is going to Cooperstown as a baseball fan. If you go to Cooperstown, you cannot wipe your smile off your face for the entire time you're there. The other thing as a baseball fan is fantasy camp. And I was telling John, I had 30 years ago when I was covering the Marlins, I actually got a chance to participate in a fantasy camp they had, which was kind of a novel idea considering the club was 3 years old, but they paired with the Reds because the Reds fantasy campers got kicked out of Plant City by owner Marge Schott. So I'm in this camp with the Reds and the Marlins, and that was the memory of this, Fergie, was the camaraderie, right? I do remember I pupped out off of Jack Billingham to Doug Flynn in the campers versus counselors game. And this was after I had taunted Billingham all week, telling him, I remember back in 3rd grade, my teacher bringing the TV into the classroom on opening day to watch Henry Aaron hit 714 off of you. So I joked about that with him all week, and then I get in the box against him, and the first pitch is a curveball right at my head. And I ended up on the ground, and the curveball ended up way outside. So it wasn't so much that I was scared for my life. I was just embarrassed by how frightened I got. But it was the most fun I've ever had around baseball. It was 4 great days on that camp. And for baseball fans, the experience of being around guys and living in the clubhouse for 2 or 3 days with things like Kangaroo Court, the stories, the kind of kibitzing and joking around that goes on, it will outlast any of the memories on the field. I can tell you that, because mostly everybody who goes to a fantasy camp is going to end up sore afterwards.
Yeah, that happens. If you don't prepare yourself to work out a little bit, stationary bike, run backwards, guys, the first thing that happens, you try to stretch a single into a double and you pull a hamstring. you know, you know, or you hit a ball between the outfields, and you think you can hit it. You think you can go for a triple. That sometimes is, and when you stumble and fall, they always say, "Well, a sniper got you."
There was always a
that
line
can
to get into
happen.
the training room at fantasy camp.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you better. Well, we'll have one or two good trainers, and the training room it stays busy because the fact that little things happen. You might get jammed taking batting practice. Now your hand's sore. Now you got to wear a donut. Now, I mean, there's certain things that that happen in a fantasy camp that they happen in big league camps. Guys do a lot of crazy things, and unfortunately, the body's got to hold up for those 5-6 days. So you're hoping that if you've done a little prepper, you got to prepare yourself in some aspect to try to do 5 days of playing doubleheaders.
And as a coach, Fergie, are you hard or are you easy on your guys?
You know, I try to let them know that don't get hurt that first 2 or 3 games because you want to play in the championship game. So that's something I try to put in the back of their mind. Hey, don't go out there and think that you're a Maury Wills or a Lou Brock on the base path. But the nice thing about it is play to your ability, and if your ability's not that good, don't try to show off too much.
That's great. I think people who go to this thing are going to have a blast. I'm glad the Rangers are doing it again. I really am.
And I think we've got a good group of coaches. Just looking at this list, guys that like to have fun, which is part of it, coaching-wise, but guys that are not afraid to rib people and that kind of thing. It's a good group of coaches, and I know Fergie will be 83 now in December. It's hard to believe. And it's great to see you wanting to you want to be involved, still be involved in fantasy camps.
Well, you know, the nice thing, the uniform still fits. I go out there and just try to reflect the memories that I did have as a Texas Ranger those 6 years. But that's the fun part of putting that uniform back on. Let me tell you, your brain reacts different when you're back on a major league field again. And just basically showing businessmen that this is what it was all about because I love the sport.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time. Again, it's the Texas Rangers Fantasy Camp presented by National Car Rental. It will be at the Rangers Complex in Surprise, Arizona, January 7th through the 11th in 2026. And we still have spots available. It'll be a great holiday gift. For somebody that you, I guess you'd like them, right? I mean, put them through that for 5 days.
It's a great gift. People who are baseball fans and who are Ranger fans. And look, I mean, you get in this camp, you get Fergie and Pudge Rodriguez. You're gonna hang out with 2 Hall of Famers. That's and look, when you talk about guys giving guys the business, Pudge is a Hall of Famer in that regard as well. So he will be riding all over people. They will have a blast. Absolutely.
Daily meals, transportation.
Oh, and also it's John. It's still open. It's open to women too, if they want to participate. Randy Huntley had like 35 camps, and over the course of him doing all that, he's had maybe 12 women participate, and some of these women can outplay the men.
Well, it should be a good time. Daily meals, transportation, lodging, and it's post-game happy hours are included in the registration. And if you're interested, you just register now. Go to texasrangers.com/fantasycamp. And we've still got spots, and we're looking forward to that in January. And we're looking forward to seeing Fergie Jenkins out at our ballpark again next season. One of the great gentlemen, one of the great Hall of Famers. And we thank you for joining us today, Fergie.
Oh, I appreciate it, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. The people that participate, they'll have stories to go home with, to tell their family, and they might even tell buddies. And the following year, we might have another one. So that's what it's all about. It's all about word of mouth, what kind of things they had and who they enjoyed playing with or for. And basically, it's a memory that's in your mind, and you will not forget it.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Fergie, for taking the time today, and we'll see you soon. Appreciate it.
Pleasure, guys. You take care.
Well, Evan, it's always great to have Fergie Jenkins and talk baseball with him. And you can't even compare the numbers. I know the game is so different, but you just look at it and you kind of marvel at what he did.
The thing, again, like you talked about with Fergie, he's 83. He's got great recall. And the number of stories, the history lessons that he can teach us about the game, we didn't even get into his experience as a pitcher of color in the 60s, being with the Phillies and being teammates with Dick Allen. He's told those stories. We've written them in the paper.
He's the first Canadian Baseball Hall of Famer, too, which people forget.
I mean, just so much. And
played hockey in Canada. I mean, you could spend much more time.
Oh, yeah. He's fascinating, and he's always enjoyable to talk to. And the fact that he shares stories from a baseball history now that goes back 70 years almost is just great. So I do, I don't want to plug Rangers stuff here as a regular thing, but listen, that a fantasy camp for whoever, if you're a fan of a team, a fantasy camp is pretty much a can't miss opportunity for rabid fans. It is just an absolute blast. I don't have any other way to describe it. It was most fun I've had around baseball in my life. And what I remember is more than anything, like the teasing and the camaraderie. There were two gentlemen from Philadelphia, of all places, in this camp that I went to. They're two brothers. They were in their 60s. They never could get to a Phillies camp, and they got to this camp. And it still rings in my head, like just how much joy these guys had from that experience. So it would make a great Christmas gift for somebody that you're close to that's a big Rangers fan.
So this is our final podcast of the 2025 calendar year. We enjoyed it. So it's as you're hearing this, the winter meetings are about to begin. This year,
favorite time of the year.
Right.
Said no writer ever.
This year they're in Orlando, Florida. I do not plan on going, which is a good thing, but Evan Grant will. So we thought in the archives in Arlington, we'd look back over some of the winter meetings from a Rangers perspective, and I think as PR people and as writers, I've been to 40 plus winter meetings. Most of them are totally boring. Teams don't do a whole lot. Back in the day, you would save information. You would save announcements to make at the winter meetings to give to your writers, because in the days before computers, one of the goals of every PR guy was to type releases and put them on the bulletin board. So if you weren't represented on the bulletin board, you felt like you weren't doing your job. So you would save anything, minor league coaching announcements, anything, because you knew for the most part there were not a lot of blockbuster trades or free agent signings, and
there felt like there was more business conducted in the winter meetings in the 80s, the 90s, and into the 2000s. Now, I think as you've gotten more and more business people running organizations, I think they look at the winter meetings as narrowing down things, and then they go home. And listen, I think Chris Young would agree with me. The winter meetings and I think John Daniels would agree, that the winter meetings are not a great atmosphere in which to do business. You are locked up in a hotel. If you're a GM, you're locked up in a hotel suite basically for 3 days. You're eating food that's brought in. I think part of the Rangers catering during there's like a thing of Tums, there's a thing of Advil or Tylenol, there's snacks and assorted like high what do you call it, vitamin C tablets and all that stuff, and so you're working long, you're working late, and you're just kind of going a little stir crazy. That's not a great environment to do like big time business decisions.
Plus the fact you've got to talk to the media every day, and by day 3, there's not a lot to say, and GMs get pretty testy. This is because it's kind of the same old, but as a writer, you've got to fill space there at the winter meetings. The fans are expecting it.
Yeah, and listen, there's a whole industry that didn't exist 30 years ago in speculation, right? I mean, MLB trade rumors didn't exist 30 years ago, and we're constantly refreshing our phone, and we're constantly chasing rumors. And the other thing that doesn't happen at the winter meetings as much anymore is, there used to be this network of agents and scouts and everybody who milled around in the lobby
right.
and chatted. And that just doesn't happen anymore.
And you don't have all the minor league people anymore
Right.
since they've taken that aspect of the winter meeting. It used to be a baseball event. Now it's basically a television show for MLB Network.
For stoking fan
of-
interest,
right.
it's still a great thing. But we have had a few.
Yes. And I will start with 1988. The Rangers are coming off not a great two seasons in a row in 87 and 88. And Tom Grieve knew he had to remake the ball club, especially offensively. And the Rangers were the toast of these winter meetings. They were in Atlanta, at the Marriott in Atlanta. And on December 5th, the first real day of the winter meetings, we traded 4 players, the biggest name being Mitch Williams, who was going to the Cubs as a closer, for Rafael Palmeiro, Jamie Moyer, and Drew Hall. Palmeiro became a fixture for the Rangers for the next 5 years. He was a young left-handed hitter and one of the best trades Tom Grieve ever made. We had Jeff Russell to close. We could afford to trade Mitch Williams, who became a pretty good closer.
Jamie Moyer ended up as a pretty good pitcher, too.
But not with the Rangers.
Not with the Rangers. But whatever happened to Drew Hall?
Pitched a couple of years, went somewhere. He pitched pretty well in 89.
What else happened at the winter meetings in 88, though, John?
In 88, the next day, we traded really 3 Ranger starters, Pete O'Brien, Oddibe McDowell, and Jerry Brown for Julio Franco. Again, trying to get another bat, a contact hitter at the top of the order. And another great trade. Franco made 3 All-Star teams, won a batting title. So Tom Grieve was going 2 for 2.
Let's face facts. In trading Jerry Brown, you traded a great nickname.
The Governor.
The Governor.
Yes.
Jerry Brown, native of the the Virgin Islands,
Right.
the American Virgin Islands.
Right.
Later played for Florida. I covered him in Florida, but he had the nickname along with the California governor at the time as the
Right.
Governor,
Right.
Jerry Brown. It was a great nickname.
Right.
It worked out well for nicknames. I think the trade probably worked out better for the Rangers.
So Tom Grieve has gotten Rafael Palmeiro and Julio Franco in the first 2 days of the winter meetings. And then to top it all off, the Rangers signed, and again, you don't see signings anymore at the winter meetings. We signed Nolan Ryan on December 7th. We did the press conference that day, and many people could say that changed the trajectory of the franchise forever.
Wait a minute. You signed Nolan Ryan? I thought he just sprouted up in the middle of Arlington.
It was no, we actually did sign him, and it came together. The Astros decided John McMullen lowballed Nolan, and Nolan wanted to stay in Texas and chose the Rangers over his former team, the California Angels, and he was close with Gene Autry. But that Tom Grieve tells the story all the time, coming out of the meeting and high-fiving Bobby Valentine. And the rest is history. So 1988, the Rangers were the toast of the winter meetings. And
Let's go to 2000.
Let's fast forward then to 2000. And these winter meetings were in Dallas, which made the whole thing kind of more tricky. And we had a new owner. We had Tom Hicks, who wanted to make a splash at the time. But prior to the splash, Doug Melvin, who was the general manager at the time, we signed 3 free agents. First baseman Andres Galarraga, third baseman Kem Caminiti, and right-handed pitcher Mark Pitkazik.
All of whom had played for the AARP the year before.
Well, we thought these guys could give us another year or two. By the end of the 2001 season, they were all gone. But again, the big news there was the Rangers were in the hunt for the top free agent on the market, Alex Rodriguez, who had come off spectacular season with the Seattle Mariners. And the Rangers, on the final day of the winter meetings, in one of the bigger press conferences I think I've ever been involved with at the Anatole Ballroom, signed Alex Rodriguez for 10 years, $252 million, which I wanted to announce as a 7-year deal. I told Tom Hicks, can we announce this as what it is, a 7-year? And today you would do this. It's a 7-year deal with player options for 2008, 9, and 10. Scott Boras wanted the 10 years and 252 out there, and that's what played. Sandy Alderson, the commissioner's office, I remember outside as we were doing this press conference, was criticizing the Rangers. That may be light, to say the least.
Did he use drunken sailor?
Yes.
He did use drunken sailor,
yes,
spending like a drunken sailor?
Yes, he did. And Evan and I got into it a little bit because Evan wanted to, you kept asking me if the deal was done, and we were under a lot of pressure. And
I was being a reporter, and as usual, I was getting beat on the story, and I wanted to confirm something, and John would not confirm it, and we ended up in a yelling, screaming match right in front of the entrance to the media workroom there. So basically, and this was like every fear I had. Like, here's the entire baseball world here in Dallas watching the work that I'm producing in some regards. Not watching the work, but they were aware of what we were doing.
In those days, it was a big deal. If you had to go above and beyond if you were the host city.
Right. And then I'm all my anxiety is ramped up over this, and then I'm trying to get this thing confirmed. I can't get it confirmed, and John and I have this thing where, like, every writer in the world, if they wanted to, could turn around and look. But here, the great thing about this whole deal is, at that point in time, the Rangers, we had 3 baseball writers. Ken Daly was our national writer. The late Jerry Fraley was kind of my backup at that point, and I had the beat.
Plus columnists.
Columnists. But
for this day.
So Ken witnesses this yelling, screaming match, and he comes up to me afterwards. And he says, I think you got to apologize to John. You guys went in and we're going to need him. I'm like, apologize for what? This is like a normal Monday morning for me and John. So that was Ken's first exposure to the great relationship John and I have had for nearly 30 years now of yelling at one another. But in the end, everything worked out that day. I don't know that I would say that the deal worked out all that well for the Rangers, but the Rangers captured all the headlines that day. Now, the mystery that still lives to this day is just how much the Rangers overbid on that contract and how much it would have taken to actually sign Alex. That doesn't ever seem to have been completely solved.
There never was. The thought was it was at least $60 million.
Yes.
And by the end of the 2001 season, both Doug Melvin and the manager, Johnny Oates, were no longer with the ball club. But, again, a big day in Rangers history. And in terms of the winter meetings, the home team really did steal all the attention. So do you have any winter meeting stories that you've had over the years? I mean, we could –
well, the year that you were on sabbatical from the Rangers, let's say, was the 2003 winter meetings, which were in New Orleans. Right. And I had written a story at that point in time going into the winter meetings about the level of dysfunction in the Rangers organization. I had written an analysis piece on that they had a dysfunctional situation in which Mike Kramer was the president, thought his role was a little bit too much fan and not enough president. I thought that the Buck and Alex dynamic was headed for a breakup, which it was.
Which it did. Yes.
And it was non-workable because I thought both the manager and the player were casting passive aggressive shots at one another, and it was clear that they didn't work. And in the story on the dysfunction in the Rangers organization, I had cast Tom Hicks in a negative light as an owner. Which Hicks aired me out at the Children's Hospital during a visit, and we didn't make up for a good 6 months after that. And then at the winter meetings, I arrive, and I'm told that John Hart will not allow me in the media briefing, that the Dallas Morning News was going to be banned from the media briefing. Well, Ken Daly was still at the paper. We had that in place. He was allowed to go. But ultimately, and I owe T.R. Sullivan, among others, a debt of thanks. T.R. said, no, you're not going to block a newspaper from participating in this. You're not going to block a reporter from participating in this. And the writers group made sure that I was there. I will just say this, that I'm standing in the lobby and a Ranger scout comes up to me and he says, listen, I don't know who you're talking to, but you nailed it. So all the dysfunction that was going on around me and being blackballed by the organization was all very angst causing, but the affirmation that I had gotten it right, that's what every writer lives for, is to make sure you're accurate and right. And I felt like I had cast the organization in an accurate, if unfavorable light. And as it turned out, a month later, Alex gets dealt. Soriano comes in here. This team is full of kids, and the 04 season may have been the most pleasant surprise of a Rangers season that I've ever covered. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So, and as Evan did say, I'm very happy. I missed that 2003 winter meetings. I eventually went to Boston for a few years before coming back.
Won one of his 3 World Series rings there.
Yes, exactly. But Evan, I hope you have a great time at the winter meetings this week. And
they're not at Disney World this time, John.
No, they're not. They're at a hotel, right?
Yeah, they're
downtown.
at a big hotel, not downtown, but out towards Disney, but not on the Disney campus.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing that's happened at the winter meetings, I know we're going long here. The other thing that you may not be aware of now is more and more GMs do not stay with their people at the host hotel. Right. They stay somewhere else because they don't want to be prisoner to being hassled in the lobby if they walk out. They want to be able to go have dinner and things like that. And so you take that dynamic out of it. But that used to be the other thing, is like you'd see your GM walking across, or you'd see a front office.
You'd have team dinners in the hotel and things like that. I mean, it's a much different dynamic. But like I said, I've went to 40 of them. Got lucky. I went to the one that used to be in Hawaii. I actually got to go to one of those. Now it's kind of a rotation of about 5 cities: Nashville, Orlando, Dallas, San Diego, Las Vegas. But I do wish you well, and hopefully there'll be some news for you to cover. So, like I said, we will be back in 2026, hopefully, and we thank you for joining us on this episode of SportsDay Rangers. Everybody have a great holiday. Evan, safe travels.
Take care, everybody.